and welcome to the football podcast that is less Bobby De Cordova-Reid and more Bobby Zamora.
Hello and welcome to the podcasting equivalent of passing the ball around at the back, running out of ideas and getting it launched to your 6'7" target man.
There's less nutrition training, protein bars and energy gels, and more a cold sausage roll from a petrol station.
That is less interested in inverting your fullbacks and more interested in your Route 1 counter-attacks.
That is less Michael Owen and more Michael Ricketts.
That isn't afraid to use its tallest centre mid as an emergency striker.
That is thinking of having £1 million rebrand of its badge, but can't be doing with Roman numerals and circles that represent the local roundabouts. Just give us a big bold font written in the club colours inside a massive football.
Hello and welcome to the podcast that can't be doing with swanning off to Southeast Asia for a post-season tour, but would rather get back to the training pitch early to make sure we're all ready for that inevitable cold, wet night in Stoke. It's the Big Man Up Top season review. I am producer Anthony, and over the past 43 weeks, Ed and Joe have brought you football, fun, and also some bigger discussions around the game we all love. So as they take a few weeks off until the next season starts, we're going to drop a few special episodes so you still have something from us to listen to each week. First up, I've gone back through the archives to pull some of the best moments from our first season of shows. And we are going to start right back at episode 1, where Ed and Joe were talking about hope and what the future may hold for their teams.
Tell us about this podcast. Why are we even doing this, Joe?
Well, you and I, Ed.
Yes.
We like talking about football.
We do.
You're a Stoke fan, aren't you?
I am. And you're a Liverpool fan.
I'm a Liverpool fan.
The whole point about this podcast really is that Joe and I are Christians and we're also mad football fans. And we know that being Christians actually impacts all areas of our life. And so we wanted to ask the question, how does being a Christian impact our lives as football fans?
Absolutely. And there's some big topics and big issues in football that, as a Christian, it can be hard to know how to approach that, how to talk about that, what to do about that. We've basically taken it upon ourselves to solve all the issues in football, haven't we?
Yeah, we have, yeah. Do you think we're going to do it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so.
How hopeful are you about Liverpool's season?
Well, there's been quite a change this summer, hasn't there? Klopp is gone, Arne Slot is in. The pre-season has looked promising, but we shouldn't judge off pre-season. But
exactly.
Everyone's getting very excited. I think quite a hopeful fan base. How about Stoke?
We had a very average season last year. We escaped relegation. There's been a lot of good work behind the scenes, a few good signings. So I would say we come into the season broadly optimistic, quietly hopeful of maybe pushing towards the playoffs, that sort of thing. There's not many fans that are thinking, right, this is a nightmare. We're going down, at least wait till September before you think
September.
that.
Liverpool would, of course, surpass expectations and go on to win the league, while Stoke got to September, decided everything was a nightmare, sacked their manager, and went on to just about avoid relegation. But it wasn't just their own teams that were discussed, even though Ed tried to mention Stoke as many times as possible in an episode.
I followed Stoke, obviously, Stoke City. As a Stoke fan, speaking of Stoke, would you see a false 9 in a Tony Pulis Stoke side for Angus Gunn, former Stoke goalkeeper?
Yeah, slip that in.
Let's give it up for Stoke goalkeepers past and present, shall we? Another goal for Tyrese Campbell, who cannot stop scoring for a different red and white striped team that's not Stoke City. When Stoke lose, that ruins my weekend. The 2011 FA Cup final that Stoke got to. Stoke's run to the final in 2011. Some of my Stoke mates, Stoke looked like world beaters. Stoke just never played good football.
There were also some big claims about Chelsea and Man United when we invited UCB1's Joel Brown onto the pod.
One of the reasons we wanted to get you into the studio to chat with us, Joel, is that we wanted to have a bit of a longer look at Chelsea, alongside looking at Man United as well. Now, these are two clubs who are having different seasons and they're in different moments, but where I would sort of bunch them together is two huge clubs who've got incredible histories and particularly have really successful recent pasts. What do you think, Joe?
It's hard to tell with Chelsea, isn't it? I think they're quite good. Whisper it quietly.
Whisper it quietly.
But I think they're in the title title race this year.
See, my younger brother keeps saying that, and it's super exciting to hear, but I don't want to agree with him
You
just
don't want
because
to
it's
jinx it, do
too
you?
painful. It's too painful to agree and say anything near to that. And so I stray far away, and I'm like, Silas, no, please don't say that. Not around me, at least. I can't take it.
Yeah, no, I can't see it.
But it's just all working. The midfield looks solid. You've got these wingers that are playing well, and you can bring other wingers off the bench, strikers that... It all just seems to be working, and it feels quite uncomfortable.
I think we're starting to see glimmers of hope, really, for Chelsea, where it's like, okay, actually, things are starting to work, and it has been a mess of going through so many managers, so many players, and a lot of it being up in the air, that actually it's kind of starting to level itself out a little bit now.
We had some other fantastic interviews during the year, including a great chat with professional footballer and founder of Ballers in God, John Bostock.
Football's always changing. Everything changes about football. The managers change, opinions change, fans change, kit changes, times change, everything changes. So if you put your hope in something that consistently changes, that's not going to be a very good foundation to build yourself as a man. So when you ask me, how does my hope in Jesus impact me? It actually has given me a complete new identity in my thought process and my performances. I now play with a freedom rather than playing with a fear of, I might be out the team, or what happens if I don't get a club. I now know that my gift is the talent that God's given me. And he wants me to enjoy that gift, but also recognize that it doesn't define me, it's been a process of, if I'm honest with you, Ed, taking me a long time to get to that place. Because you all desire to succeed, but ultimately I know that God's plans for me are good.
A little later in the year, England's first ever £1 million teenager, Bruce Dyer, came on the show to share his testimony and talk a bit about his career.
So my personality, right, I'm all or nothing. Like when I'm in something, I'm in it. And so, by the grace of God, it's like when I was partying, it's like I was a front line. I was a leader of the pack. And so I was wild. I was full on. I always knew in my heart I would go back to church. I didn't know how, but I just knew that was my roots. When I became a Christian, I walked straight into the dressing room at Palace. And I said to all the lads, I've become a born-again Christian. And everyone started laughing. I mean, everyone. It's like, if to say, like, last week we was out doing some crazy things and you're telling me about Jesus, are you mad? And they all laughed, and they, some was like, we'll give him a month, mate. In my era, like, man, you could count on your hand. There was myself. There was Phil Starbuck doing some stuff with Christians in sports. Linvoy Primus, Darren Moore, they would there was just us really in terms that were vocal and out with our faith. And so it was a lonely road back then, and a lot of people used to laugh and mock, where now, man, you go across football clubs in England, there's Christians everywhere. God is definitely doing something in the world of football. There's definitely a move of his spirit.
We also got to talk to the host of Soccer Saturday, Simon Thomas, about his advocacy for men's mental health.
What's your sort of comment on maybe the landscape around footballers' mental well-being at the moment?
I think it's beginning to change, but it's a slow burner. I remember when I came away from Sky in the autumn of 2017, having developed some really pronounced anxiety issues and panic attacks. And I can't say who it was, but one of the people that I work with in front of camera for Sky, an ex-footballer, a pundit, rang me. And he spoke about his own struggles in this area. Now, you would look at him and you would listen to him, you'd remember him playing and think, there's no way. He surely doesn't struggle with this stuff. And yet did. I remember thinking at the time, gosh, if he was able to open up and speak about this publicly in the way that he's speaking about it to me now down the phone, this would have such a big impact. And I think we are beginning to see more footballers talking about it. There's so much unseen stuff within the world of football.
And there were some great discussions with ministries and organisations about how Christians can use football and sport to reach out to others, like this chat with Martin Bateman of Ambassadors Football.
Kids especially, they don't like being at school, they don't like being at church. They actually want to be on a football field. So if you can harness that and say, well, actually, through this session, we're going to talk about a good character value. You hear it from professional coaches these days. They talk about the whole person being really important. So you can reflect that in grassroots football and say, we're running this session. We always pause at half time because we want to talk about some character value or a story from the world of football, and we just want to relate it to what it means for our faith, because it's part of our lives when we're at church or when we're on the football field. So we're looking to be able to build God's kingdom, not particularly Ambassador's kingdom, by saying, how can we do community football outreach through many churches around the country? So we have a community football outreach journey we would take a church on if they wanted to sign up. So that's 12 months of us walking alongside them, where we go through orientation and training with a group from that church. It could be walking football for older folk. It could be a women's football session. It could be a kids session. We'll come and help provide that for the first 6 weeks and set you up to then lead it yourselves.
Some big things happened in the world of football this year, and Ed and Joe were always on hand to discuss them. The issue of sports washing came up throughout the season, and it always provided interesting conversation.
I think we're in a place in football where we know so much through social media, through journalism. We know so much about our clubs, more than we ever have before, about our club ownership, who they are as people, what they do. And I think for me, this does stem from the Qatar World Cup.
Yeah.
I think when that was going on, there was a lot of conversations about this isn't right, and that it's held in Qatar, you know, this nation that doesn't really have a footballing past. And for me, there wasn't really that space to talk about a Christian response to that. How should we, as Christians, be responding to these issues?
The Qatar World Cup is a really good example, because you had, for the first time, or maybe not the first time, but more than ever before, the spotlights were on that country. I think it was a bit the same during the Russia World Cup as well, but so much more with the Qatar World Cup. And there was so many questions about everything from their human rights record to fan experience when they got there, and whether the country would be suitable to host the World Cup. There were documentaries made about it, and for the first time it felt like, okay, we know the issues here. As Christians, we should be people of justice. We should be people who are not happy with systems of injustice as well. But at the same time, how far does that extend? Just because a sport I love is taking place in a country where they do things that I may not agree with.
If we're thinking about a Christian response, it doesn't say, thou shalt not support a nation-state-owned club.
Thou shalt not support Newcastle.
Exactly. Yeah, it doesn't talk about that. For me, it comes down to an individual decision, isn't it? And I think something the Bible does say is that we are created with a conscience.
Yeah.
We are created with this mindset of we have to make decisions in our life that align with our morals that we have from the Bible, from our Christian faith.
Then in December, there was a big controversy as Crystal Palace captain Mark Gahey wrote "Jesus loves you" on the Pride armband.
He's just in such a difficult position there. I think either he doesn't wear the armband, he gets stick. He wears the armband and there's no message on it, he gets stick. Maybe from Christians and from people he knows. He's chosen to write the statement on the armband, which I think it's a real statement. I think it's unfair to almost expect that of someone.
And I think, again, it's coming back to this thing of footballers as role models, isn't it? Some players, they don't like the idea of being a role model, whereas some could argue you signed up for it. You signed up to be a role model when you put on your first pair of boots. Yeah. Because I'm not asked to make a statement when I come into work. I'm just here doing my job and all that sort of stuff. What would happen if I was asked to do that? I don't really know. There are so many other types of statements that players are asked to do. Statements around racism, statements, even things like wearing the poppy in November. And again, we could talk of James McLean and Nemanja Matic, who famously didn't want to wear the poppy. Players are being asked to make more and more statements about all sorts of things, aren't they?
I actually think the Mazraoui story is really interesting here.
So tell us about that.
Yeah, so if you haven't seen this story, so Manchester United were going to do a similar statement alongside the Stonewall campaign. They were going to wear kind of rainbow tracksuits in the warm-up. He didn't want to wear the tracksuit, very much in the same way that Sam Morsy didn't. So then the whole team decided not to wear the tracksuit because they were worried that this would single out Mazraoui and he would get a lot of abuse for it.
Yeah.
I think that's really interesting because that's kind of a whole team getting behind someone. No doubt there's different views and beliefs in that team, but they've put that to the side and they've all collectively decided not to single out someone. I think that really helps with the whole statement conversation, that this isn't someone doing it on their own.
Yeah. With all of this is a really complex issue. It's a really thorny issue.
We also looked at how fans react to what we see on the pitch and whether we need to treat players with the grace of God like we would any other person.
There's a bit of a disconnect, isn't there, between the people that we see on TV and us in our living room or, on the other end of our phone or whatever it may be. And it's just very tempting to just sort of say what you think with no filter. And actually, would you speak like that to that person face to face? I'm not sure you would. If you look at that from a football perspective, that same distance is there. The fans are in the stands or even watching on telly, and if a player's not playing well, you feel like you want to let them know. and actually, if that player was in front of you, would you say those things to that player in that way? We've actually seen this quite starkly this week with the it was last week, Everton away at Tottenham when they lost quite heavily, and there was a lot of footage on social media of Everton fans telling the players at Euston Station exactly what they thought. We'll put it like that, and they were quite sort of ugly scenes.
Well, I think you're right. I think everyone feels entitled to an opinion, and that is true. Like, we all have them. I think you're right about the whole distance thing. When you're in a stadium full of people, it's so easy just to join in with what's being said. You're a few hundred metres away from, I don't know, is it a few hundred metres? That feels quite far.
You're some distance.
You're some distance away from these players, and it's easy for you to do it. You often see videos of like non-league football where you're a lot closer to the players. And I think I saw a video earlier on this season of a fan hurling abuse at a player during non-league, and the player almost like retaliating and giving him some back, and suddenly we get so offended. If they say it back, we're like, oh, how dare they say this? Like, that's so unprofessional. So I think there's a lot of double standards at play here.
This was a topic that was particularly relevant towards the end of the season when it was announced that Trent Alexander-Arnold would be leaving Liverpool to join Real Madrid on a free transfer.
You could definitely hear significant portions of the crowd booing him. You could also hear significant portions of the crowd cheering him.
I think this is
like
a thing.
It was definitely there, so you feel like the fans are divided on what they think, but enough that makes me think, what is going on at Anfield? This is ridiculous. After the season you've had, Trent Alexander-Arnold has been such a great servant to your club, and yes, he is moving to a European rival, whatever that means, but he has been a good servant to the club. I don't understand why so many of the fans are being so visceral in their hatred of him leaving.
I watched the game yesterday and I genuinely felt uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Like, watching a player that I've loved for the last 9 years play at Anfield. Such a great player to watch, really creative. I don't think anyone expected it to be this level.
And if there's anything that's a recurring theme of our podcast, Joe, it's that us reminding ourselves that these people that we idolise, well, for starters we shouldn't, but these people on the pitch, they are humans, and they have families and children and all that sort of stuff, and we should be remembering that when we go and sit in the stands, and we should be treating them like fellow humans too.
Yeah, absolutely, we should.
Unfortunately, not every conversation Ed and Joe had managed to solve the world's problems.
Football is kind of this great way of having conversations. Like you say, you're not looking at someone when you're talking to them. You're both fixed on this same thing, and you can have conversations while you're watching it, and it's less awkward. It's almost, like when, I don't know if you ever had to do this, Ed, but if you had to have a difficult conversation with an ex after you've had like a breakup, you'd go on a walk around the park, wouldn't would you do that?
Absolutely no comment, Joe. I cannot give any experience.
Fine, hypothetically.
Would you not do it face to face, Joe?
No. Go on a walk. Then you can just look at the floor.
Dating advice from Joe Rivers.
Along with the serious, there was also the fun, like in our Christmas special trivia quiz with some friends from UCB1.
On a previous episode of the pod, we talked about Mark Viduka, didn't we? who wore number 9 in his time at Leeds. But in Mark 9,
Nice.
we read about the
Subtle.
transfiguration of Jesus, where he took Peter, James and John up a high mountain. Honestly, all of these questions are a huge stretch. So in the transfiguration of Jesus, there was a supernatural appearance of 2 Old Testament figures. Who were they? Joe and Sarah, what have you gone for?
Oh, we've gone for Moses and David.
Moses and David.
We've gone for Moses and Elijah.
Moses and Elijah is correct.
Yes.
Yes.
Do we get a point
No.
or nothing?
No, you needed both of them. Which Austrian footballer who has played for clubs such as West Ham United, Bologna and Werder Bremen was once described by former manager Jose Mourinho as having the attitude of a child?
Completely blanked on Austrian football players.
So that's a pass from Anthony and Joel. Joe and Sarah?
We have gone for Marko Arnautovic.
Is correct. Well done.
Another question.
I thought you'd written aromatic.
Sarah and Joe, you've won the quiz.
Well played, guys.
By
well
1
done.
point.
Well done.
Oh, close one.
Well done.
Excellent
Close
stuff.
on that. Very good.
Anthony, how do you feel as the producer of this show to have lost to Joe in a quiz?
I believe we won the Bible round, which makes us better Christians.
I'll accept that.
He's not wrong. He's not wrong.
And of course, each week was the perfectly named Bible Ballers.
Which former Wigan and Fulham midfielder, upon signing for Hull City, was presented with a contract containing a misprinted higher salary than originally agreed, which he signed anyway?
I'm quite confident in thinking that Jimmy Bullard has played for all of those teams.
Jimmy Bullard, the purveyor of fine goal celebrations, is correct, Joe. Well done.
In 2016, which goalkeeper became the oldest ever Premier League winner?
I literally can't get Scott Carson out of my head, and it's not him.
Give an answer.
Tim Krul.
Tim Krul. He says Tim Krul with such a dejected
It's because I
look
know
on his
I
face.
can't be here all day.
Oh, lad. Yeah, it's not Tim Krul.
No, I know.
I'm afraid. It's Mark Schwarzer.
Oh, come on.
Which England under-20 international, who is also eligible to play for Jamaica and currently plays on loan in League One, has not one but 2 books of the Bible in their full name?
That is so difficult.
Really hard.
That is so difficult.
Oh my gosh.
I've got an answer, but it's not good. I've gone for Samuel Isaiah Jones.
Okay, I've gone for Micah Hamilton. He used to play for City, who Paul supports, who sent in the question.
The correct answer to this week's Bible Ballers is Micah Philippe Jude Hamilton.
Oh!
He's a former Man City youth player.
Which English striker who ended his playing career at an Australian club represented England at every level from under 16 to senior team and won the UEFA Champions League with 2 different clubs?
Jermaine Defoe. No, there's no book of Jermaine.
Yeah, you're allowed to look at the Bible if you want.
James Cleverley was in that team.
Who's James Cleverley?
Tom Cleverley. No, who's not.
This is an absolute mess.
Don't put this.
James Cleverley. What's well, we're definitely keeping that in. James Cleverley.
James Cleverley. He was, wasn't he like foreign secretary or something?
Yeah, British politician and Army Reserve officer. Home Secretary. November 2023.
James Cleverley. Oh, gosh.
Goodness me.
As you can tell, my head's gone.
Which defender won the most aerial duels in the Premier League last season?
I'm going with Everton, and I'm going with James Tarkowski.
You don't think it's going to be a double Dan Burn?
No, I don't think it's... If it's a double Dan Burn, I'm going to be livid.
Yeah.
I'm locking in James Tarkowski.
He's only got it right.
Yes!
Get in!
Come on! He's finally got one. Now listen, that has meant that we have finished the season in terms of Bible Ballers. Obviously, Joe, we know you've won it. 16-6.
16-6?
Yes.
That's a demolition, Ed.
Well played.
You got 6 right all season.
I got 6 right all season. But listen, Joe, I'm very, very proud of you. Well done.
Thank
I
you.
actually have a little trophy. Here it is. I would like to present you
Oh, wow.
with the Bible Ballers trophy.
Thank you. I know
Excellent.
that this has been on your desk for the last 3 years.
It has.
I do not accept this trophy because it's an afterthought.
I didn't know why it was there. It's just been there, and so I'm giving it to you. Well done, Joe.
Thanks.
Finally, we'd be nothing without you, our great listeners. We've loved responding to your messages and questions over the season.
Should we start with some correspondence, Joe?
Yeah, we've had quite the influx, Ed, following something that happened last week.
Yes.
Do you want to talk us through?
Yes. So in the quiz last week, I momentarily forgot that there was a book of the Bible called Peter.
Well, there's two of them, isn't there?
There's two of them,
Yeah.
and it was, I read the Bible. I'm not on here to display my Bible reading prowess, but
Sure.
I read it. Okay, I'm very aware of the books of First and Second Peter, but in the moment, I forgot. And let me tell you, people are not letting me live it down. Put it
Rightly
this way.
so.
So you'll remember former guest Morgan, who we had on a few weeks ago. He sent me a message saying, really enjoying this book. Have you heard of it? And then sent me a screenshot of the first few lines of First Peter. I thought that was
It's good stuff.
mildly amusing. We had a message from Sarah who just said, Ed, not just one, there is 2 whole books called
Yeah,
Peter.
2 of them.
And I even had a message from Graham who actually said, will you get sacked from UCB for that?
Sacked in the morning.
They're clamouring. They're clamouring for my
It's
job.
been a bad start to the season and they're already clamouring for you to
I
be
know,
sacked.
and you know what? Look, I can't argue with that. We've had some correspondence, Joe.
Some more?
I know, we love it when
People are listening.
People are listening.
Wow.
They're getting in touch. That they're enjoying the podcast. We've had an email from Lizzie who says, "Hey guys, absolutely loving the pod. Loving is in capital letters, so I do believe her. My one gripe would be your guest last week, Joel Brown." Not that he was the gripe, but the gripe came from none other than Joe Rivers when he claimed Chelsea would be in a, quote, title race. Guarantee they've lost to Forest 2-1 this week. Also, can we talk about when City will go away, please? Cheers. Keep up the great work. Lizzie, hashtag come on you Gunners, hashtag North London is red, hashtag North London forever.
So Lizzie's an Arsenal fan.
I think
then?
she's an
Yeah.
Arsenal fan. We've had a fantastic email from Tom, the Chelsea fan, who just sent us some nice, just some lovely, encouraging correspondence. He was just very keen to just say that he loved the series, thought it was great, and said if you ever want a fan of a real club on too, we can get him on as a guest.
Oh, okay.
He's a Chelsea fan.
I thought he said a real club.
His exact words were none of this Liverpool nonsense.
Oh, interesting. I've actually been quite nice about Chelsea, I feel.
But it's great to hear from Tom. We had a lovely email from George. He says, thank you, Ed and Joe. I'm not into football, though I am enjoying listening to the big man up top. Your banter and relating the Bible to sport/life is much appreciated. Keep it up. No pun intended.
Oh,
from
very
George.
good.
So
Very,
thank you.
very good.
That's lovely. And, I think, I want to hear from anybody who's listening to this podcast who isn't a football fan.
So all in all, it's been a great year. And I'm sure you'll agree with me that it's well worth renewing Ed and Joe's contracts and bringing them back for the next season. Thank you so much for listening once again to the Big Man Up Top. As we've mentioned before, we're going to be doing some live shows over the summer. We're going to be at the Gathering in June and also the National Christian Football Festival in July. So make sure you come and check those out. There'll be information in the show notes, and if you're there, come and say hi. If you want to get in touch with the show, please ping us an email to podcast@ucb.co.uk or drop us a comment on YouTube. You can follow, subscribe, give us great reviews, all that kind of thing, because this will really help us get the word out. And if you've enjoyed it, why not tell your mates so they can listen as well? There'll be another special episode next week. But from Ed, Joe, and myself, thank you for listening over this year. Bye.